We are first introduced to the most popular clique in Westburg High School, known as the Heathers. The Heathers consist of the three most popular girls in high school, Heather Duke, Heather McNamara, and the leader of the clique, Heather Chandler. Veronica Sawyer, who is the protagonist, finds herself now involved with the Heathers as their new recent member. She doesn't agree with the Heathers' malicious behavior, but does not speak up about it and continues to keep it to herself. She is soon noticed by a mysterious individual. Heather Chandler reminds Veronica that this is what she wanted, and she should be grateful and lucky to be a part of the most powerful clique in school. Veronica approaches the mysterious individual to introduce herself. His name is Jason Dean, also known as JD, and he is the antagonist. Veronica quickly becomes more and more irritated with Heather Chandler's callous ways. As Veronica and Heather stop at a gas station on their way to a college party, Veronica and JD bump into each other, and they slowly become more acquainted. When Veronica and Heather arrive at the party, Veronica is instantly uncomfortable. She is left with a random guy while Heather runs off with another. Although Heather wants to go back to the party, she is easily persuaded by the boy to stay longer. Meanwhile, Veronica is left alone with a random college guy. He continues to make multiple passes at Veronica while she gets irritated and walks out the room and leaves him behind. Heather gets annoyed with Veronica for not staying with the boy. Veronica then throws up after feeling sick. She continues to walk out of the party as Heather chases after her. Heather threatens Veronica with the events that took place at the party. After Veronica arrives home, she gets a surprise visit from JD. They spend the night together, and the next morning, they plan to prank Heather. JD wants to trick Heather into drinking multi-purpose cleaner, but Veronica knows that'll kill her, so she uses milk and orange juice instead. Veronica becomes distracted with JD and grabs the wrong cup. JD then notices, but says nothing about it. As Heather drinks from the cup, she instantly feels the effects and collapses to her death. As Veronica is too shocked to think, JD comes up with a plan to make Heather's death look like a suicide. Heather Duke is seen eating what she normally wouldn't around Heather Chandler. As a school who once hated Heather for her torment, the students begin to empathize for her. They attend her funeral with mixed emotions, with a majority of them being glad she was gone. At the end of the funeral, Heather McNamara convinces Veronica to go on a double date. Heather and Veronica are seen having a poor time. Heather sticks through it, but Veronica leaves. The following day at school, rumors were spread about Veronica, that she had spent the night with both Ram and Kurt. When Veronica found out, she and JD decided to play a prank on Kurt and Ram. Through a phone call, Veronica seduces Kurt to meet her at a forest with Ram. JD convinces Veronica to use a gun with special bullets that will not kill them. When all three are in the forest, Veronica convinces Ram and Kurt to remove their clothing. As Veronica counts down, JD appears from behind a tree and shoots Ram in the neck. Veronica checks on Ram and notices that he is dead. She realizes the bullets were real. Kurt tried to escape, but JD chased him back to Veronica, where she shot him. Veronica is in shock but helps JD set the crime scene as another suicide. The following morning, JD tries to convince Veronica that killing is what she wanted. Veronica denies she wanted them dead. At Ram and Kurt's funeral, Veronica is seen with JD giggling. Kurt's little sister turns around with sadness in her eyes as Veronica begins to realize what she had just done. As time passes, the school begins to subtly glorify suicide, as if it were a trend. As Veronica begins to notice JD's sociopathic tendencies, she calls it quits. JD then blackmails Heather Duke into becoming the next Heather Chandler. Veronica notices Heather Duke's new look and becomes irritated. Veronica quickly realizes Heather Duke's attempt to be the new leader. She makes a surprise visit to Veronica and they listen to their favorite radio show and begin to notice the anonymous speaker on the show is Heather McNamara, who is sharing all of her emotions. Heather Duke exposes Heather McNamara to the whole school. Heather McNamara runs out of class and Veronica chases after her. Once Veronica gets to the restroom, she immediately stops Heather McNamara from committing suicide. After Heather Duke obeys JD, he then hands her a petition for the whole school to sign. Heather Duke then confesses to Veronica that the petition was all JD's idea. After school, Veronica arrives home to her concerned parents, revealing they had spoken to JD, who shared his worry towards Veronica's suicidal thoughts, leaving a note with her forged handwriting. She then walks in her room to find a doll hanging by its neck. Meanwhile, JD is seen outside her house. Out of nowhere, JD appears in Veronica's room and wakes Veronica from her sleep. He then drags her out of her room to find a weapon and forge a suicide note. JD then runs to Heather Duke's room with a knife and locks the door behind him as Veronica chases after him. Veronica suddenly finds herself at a funeral. Heather Duke's funeral. She appears shocked and confused when unexpectedly Heather Chandler appears, which leaves Veronica in utter disbelief. Veronica wakes up from what seems to all be a nightmare. Meanwhile, JD is seen grabbing his gun and climbing towards Veronica's room. When JD arrives to Veronica's room, he finds what appears to be Veronica's suicide. He proceeds to read her.
We students of Westerberg High will die. Today, our burning bodies will be the ultimate protest to a society that degrades us.
JD admits his plans to bombing the entire school. Veronica's mother then walks in and is stunned to see Veronica hanging. Veronica is then seen lifting her head to appear that she is still alive, tricking JD. JD then begins to work on the bombs. The following day, JD arrives at school. He immediately starts prepping the bombs. As JD begins setting up the bombs, Veronica is on a search to find him. Although JD is taken by surprise that Veronica is still alive, he grabs her and knocks her unconscious. Veronica soon wakes up and immediately looks for a weapon. She then attacks JD with a weapon and gets a hold of the gun. As she has JD at gunpoint, he attempts to attack her, but Veronica begins to shoot. As he tries to stay up from the shots, he pierces the bomb with his knife, stopping the bomb entirely. Veronica is finally relieved to have saved the school from the bombing. As she walks out of the school, she is surprised JD is walking right behind her. He opens his coat to reveal to her he has strapped himself in the bomb. JD walks a fair distance away from Veronica and the school. Veronica stands outside of the school to watch as JD commits his own suicide by bombing himself. As the school evacuates, Veronica confronts Heather Duke. Veronica shares with Heather that she is no longer under her control and that she is the new sheriff in town. Veronica then proceeds to befriend the least popular person in school,